back to another virtual consulting session. This session's questions are, do you have the patience to have peace in your life? How do you overcome the frustrations that life brings that destroy your peace? The answer to these questions are coming up next. Please keep watching. Before I get started, let's review the flip chart on the screen now and define finding love, joy, and peace as the first three things we want the most in our lives. You can see that the things we want most of all are identified in red with a red stop sign. Love, joy, and peace have a red stop light. Why? Well, let's flip the chart and see why. The reason why the three things we want have a red light is because of the pattern of the world, which gives us bitterness, misery, and worry. We have a yellow light because we must proceed with caution and may need to stop if the yellow light changes to a red signal. Can you relate to what I'm saying here? So let's examine this flip chart here a little bit. So wanted, you see that we have transformation. That's transformation of the heart. So we want love, joy, and peace. But the world gives us some things that are not really wanted. So you can see bitterness, misery, and worry. We have a yellow signal there, right? So the only way we can get what we need in the face of the pattern of this world is to renew our minds with some much needed qualities from God. And here you see again, we have a clear signal on three of these things that we want. But we need these three things. Once you learn how to own these qualities by the renewing of your mind, you can have the things you want by the following standards. By being committed to being a loving person in spite of the bitterness that comes your way. By understanding that you may not be compatible to be happy with the people, things, and places that make you miserable. But you can maintain your joy because you find your joy in knowing who Jesus is and what he did and does for you on your behalf. Are you relating to what I'm saying? By understanding that you can be at peace even when life brings you worry because you are trusting God and Jesus to take care of you. In order to do this, you must be a trustworthy person to allow God to take care of you by believing in his son, Jesus Christ, and living your life in his way, truth, and life. And we'll be teaching you his truth and life once we completely understand the way of Jesus, as you can see on this chart now. To understand the way of Jesus and to have patience to get to the peace that you want, you need to understand that the patience you want from the worldly standpoint is not possible. So let's flip the chart again, and you're going to see a red signal with patience above it. Why? Well, let's define what patience is from a worldly standpoint. Please define patience.
Here's the definition of patience. The capacity to accept or tolerate delay, trouble, or suffering without getting angry or upset.
The capacity to accept or tolerate delay, trouble, or suffering without getting angry or upset. What happens when we get angry and upset? Well, let's flip the chart again. Now you can see what happens when we get angry or upset because we don't have the capacity to accept or tolerate delay, trouble, or suffering. Frustration sets in a big way, but on the chart we have a yellow signal. Why do we have this yellow signal? Because that is the pattern we have learned from the world, as you can see on the top of the column. Can we proceed through an intersection when frustration is in front of us? Yes, but we must use caution until we renew our minds. So, how do we define frustration? How do you define frustration?
Here's the definition of frustration: the feeling of being upset or annoyed, especially because of inability to change or achieve something.
And it says here similar, an event or circumstance that causes one to have feelings of frustration. After hearing the world definition of frustration and reading what else was defined, we need to define what biblical patience is. So I'm going to ask the phone what biblical patience is. What is biblical patience?
According to encyclopedia.com, the quality or virtue of patience is presented as either forbearance or endurance. In the former sense, it is a quality of self-restraint or of not giving way to anger, even in the face of provocation. It is attributed to both God and man and is closely related to mercy and compassion.
Now let's flip the chart again, and you're going to see a green signal where peace is concerned. The key point here is to have trust in God to bring us peace. Have you ever heard the song Trust and Obey, for there is no other way to be happy in Jesus than to trust and obey? I'll link the song below in the video in the descriptions. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus than to trust and obey. In order to have patience, we need to obey Jesus. Let's look at a couple of things on the screen here next to me. Obey for patience equals faithful. Why? How do we define the word faithful? How do you define the word faithful?
Here's the definition of faithful: remaining loyal and steadfast.
Remaining loyal or steadfast. That's faithful. True to the facts of the original. That's the second definition. Now, how can we be a faithful person and trust and obey Jesus to have peace and patience in our lives? How can we do that? Patience is also a pivot point in how we respond to and treat other people. What do I mean by that? Please study the session of patience at the end of the screen. You will see up here, okay? So what are we going to do in the next virtual consulting session? Well, who knows? I might teach you a few points of what biblical patience is. Let's do that right now. How do you define biblical patience?
According to encyclopedia.com, patience, the quality or virtue of patience, is presented as either forbearance or endurance. In the former sense, it is a quality of self-restraint or of not giving way to anger, even in the face of provocation. It is attributed to both God and man and is closely related to mercy and compassion. So
you heard me already recite that. She told us the quality or virtue of patience is presented as either forbearance or endurance. In the former sense of the quality of self-restraint or not giving way to anger, even in the face of provocation, it is an attribute to both God and man and is closely related to mercy and compassion, okay? So when I take you to this flow chart now, you're going to see patience, quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. That's what we know about patience when it defines the fruit of the Spirit. But remember, you have to possess certain qualities, and I already talked about being faithful. Faithful comes from 2 Timothy 2 through 13. So let's read that right now. Actually, let's listen to it. Please read 2 Timothy 2:13.
Sure, for that, you can talk to YouVersion Bible. Does that sound good? Alright, get a YouVersion Bible. 2 Timothy 2 verse 13.
If we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he cannot deny himself.
What would you like me to read?
If we are faithless, he, God, remains faithful because he cannot deny himself. How do we put that into terms of understanding the pivot point of knowing who Jesus is and the way he wants us to live our life? Well, in the next session coming up, or the next words on the chart here would be kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and gentleness. But those are not feelings of emotion. Those are character traits or a state of being. In order to understand what a state of being is, you need to understand the pivot point of patience. So in my next session, what I like to do is I like to explain to you, first of all, what the nest means behind these 4 words, but I'd also like to introduce you to what spiritual motivational gifts are. What motivates you spiritually should help you to define your state of being when you're dealing with other people. These words are not kind, good, faithful, or gentle. These words have the nest on the end of them. So kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and gentleness, they're a state of being. They're an action that is done in the face of the evil patterns of this world. You need to understand that. So in my next session, we're actually going to discuss the pivot point. I'm going to bring a actual scale in here that has weights and balances. I'm going to explain that to you. But until then, my friends, may God bless you. May his face shine upon you, and may Jesus always bring you joy. If you need me, there is an email in the descriptions below this video that you can email, and you can talk to me anytime you want through an email. I'll be here for you. I'll see you soon.